Thanks to a couple of big swings by Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, the New York Mets snapped their two-game losing streak and got back on track Monday night. Could one of these guys win an MVP this year? I'll talk about that and much more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Sometimes baseball can be simple, and the easiest way to break down the game on Monday night is the New York Mets won thanks to two big swings, one off the bat of Pete Alonso, another one off the bat of Francisco Lindor. That is why they win. Two home runs account for all five of the Mets' runs. Outside of those two swings, the New York Mets went 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position and did not have a ton of opportunities, but they got the big swings when they needed it. The first one, again, Pete Alonso, top of the fourth inning, Juan Soto gets on with a walk, and Pete Alonso, who falls behind the count, gets a hanging cutter up in the zone, and he absolutely demolished it. It hit it way, way back into the stands in left field. And at the time, the Mets were trailing by a score of 1-0 as Corbin Carroll hit a leadoff homer for the Diamondbacks to start off the game. So the Mets flip that around. It's 2-1. They hold on to that lead for a while. Then Francisco Lindor comes up in the seventh inning with a couple of runners in scoring position. Tyrone Taylor with a double that was after a infield hit by Francisco Alvarez, who had runners in second and third, Lindor up. He also falls behind the count, and they try to get a back foot slider in on him. It didn't get to his back foot. Instead, it was low and in the zone, and Lindor was absolutely all over it. Just narrowly missed the pool out in right center field in Arizona there. Hits a 3-run homer, and the Mets take a 5-1 lead. And if you just think about those two guys, before we get into some of the stuff that happened at the end of that game, it's pretty remarkable what Lindor has done over this extended period of time, because this felt very reminiscent of so many games the Mets won last year where it's close and you need that big hit. And Lindor's always the guy that gets the big hit. Dating back to June 1st of last year, Francisco Lindor trails only Shohei Ohtani in wins above replacement in the National League, according to Fangraphs. And that is in 6 less games played, a 7.5 F-WAR compared to Ohtani at 7.8. Lindor, across that span from June 1st of last year until now, hitting 297, 368 on base, 531 slug. Those are monster numbers. 30 home runs, 24 stolen bases, 96 runs scored, 81 RBIs, and 129 games played. He has just been sensational. Does it with the glove, does it with the bat, does it with his leadership. He is one of the most valuable players in baseball. He is still the Mets' best player, despite what Pete Alonso has done to start this season. And for my money, he's still the best player in the National League, setting Ohtani and his unicorn alienness aside. Francisco Lindor is at his apex at a baseball player. I truly believe that. I've talked about it in the past. He has hit this point of his career where he has a decade of a Hall of Fame resume in the rearview mirror. He's gotten to 250 home runs. He's gotten to 1,500 hits. He's been remarkable throughout his career. And he carries that decade of experience, that resume, with him into each game, but he's still at an athletic prime. So you have prime athleticism paired with incredible knowledge and experience of the game and just knowing what it takes to get through the marathon. Lindor is so good. And this year, Pete Alonso is just on another planet himself. He is outdoing the alien in Shohei Ohtani and anyone else in the National League. He has been the best player in the National League, won the award for April, and has continued it in May. He went into the game today leading the National League in WAR at 2.3. To put that into context, last year, Pete Alonso had a 2-point WAR F-WAR season over a full 162 games played. Now here he is in 36 games, and he outproduced that WAR. In his 37th game, he hits another home run, goes 2 for 4. So now you look at his stats, that WAR number is going to climb, and he's hitting 349, 469 on base. Let me say that again. 469 on base for Peter Alonso. Are you kidding me? 674 slug, 9 homers, 33 RBIs. He leads the National League in the entire slash line, batting average, on base, slug, leads it all, which means he's obviously leading in OPS at 1.143. His 13 doubles lead the league, his 45 hits lead the league, and he's 1 RBI behind Teoscar Hernandez for the National League lead there as well. He is a legit MVP candidate right now. It's unbelievable what Pete is doing, and I wanted to get all of that out of the way first because I feel like that should have been the overriding story of the game, and it still is. But the end of the game, which we're going to talk about in the next segment, made it a lot closer than it should have been because when Lindor hits that home run, puts the Mets up 5-1, felt like they were going to cruise to a victory because Griffin Canning and Huascar Brazaban made easy work of the Diamondbacks all night. Canning gives up that leadoff homer to Carroll. That allowed a base hit, but struck out the next batter that he faced, the third batter of the game, gets Josh Naylor to hit into a double play ball, and just settled in from there. He would give up 4 more singles, but stranded every single one of them. Second inning, it was a leadoff single, but he nearly erased it immediately as there was a double play ball hit to Jeff McNeil that ate him up a little bit. He stayed with it, got a force out at second, but that could have been a double play ball. Canning strikes out the next batter, gets another ground ball, gets out of the inning. Third, he has a 1-2-3 frame where he picked up 2 strikeouts. Fourth inning, he gets 3 more ground balls. One of them found a hole, the other 2 found gloves, and then Canning picked up a strikeout to end that inning. Fifth inning, gets the first 2 outs, then he gives them a pair of singles, putting Ketel Marte up with 2 on and 2 outs, but he quickly gets another ground ball on 2 pitches to get out of that jam. It's remarkable how much better Canning has been at keeping the ball on the ground. They mentioned it during the game last year. His ground ball rate was around 41%. This year, over 51%. So a huge spike in ground ball rate because he's keeping hitters off balance. He is really locating that slider and that changeup at the bottom of the zone where he's able to just, duck barrels and get guys to top baseballs. He is sneaky with that fastball. It seems like the Mets just figured out how to optimize his arsenal. I can eat my crow. He has been way better than I expected, and he was rolling in this one at 77 pitches through 6 innings. Thought he was going to get through 6, but when he walked the leadoff man in the 6th, Mendoza yanked him, and I don't blame him because the last thing you want is to leave Canning out there too long, and he gives up a 4 spot. Instead, you go to Brazaban. Brazaban gets the double play ball and a strikeout to get out of the 6th inning. He holds up Lindor's homer with a 1-2-3 7th, and the Mets through 7 were sitting pretty at a 5-1 score. Dedniel Nunez was the adventure that I'll talk about in the next segment, but to close the book a little bit on Canning, he continues to be more of a 5-and-dive guy, but if your 5-and-dive guy has a 2.50 ERA through 7 starts, I don't care. The Mets are 6-1 when he takes the mound. They've won his last 5 starts. The last 3 have been exactly 5-and-dive. 5 innings pitched, either 1 earned run or 0 earned runs, and just gets out of there with a lead, and the bullpen does the rest. The time before that, he went 6 innings, allowed 1 run. The time before that is when he faced the A's and gave up 4 runs in 5 1/3, which you can say is his worst start of the season, but the Mets still won that game, which is why they've won his last 5 consecutive starts. So when Canning's on the mound, things typically go well for the Mets, although this one almost got away from them. I want to talk about Dedniel Nunez's season debut because it was rough. It was not the way you want to make a first impression for the year, but he's going to have some more rope. I want to talk about Nunez. We'll also go through some of the updates with some of the Mets pitchers who are hurt. Not good updates. We'll talk about all of that in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money through a partner is smoother than ever. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now let's talk about Dedniel Nunez and his season debut. It was an unmitigated disaster. He walked the bases loaded, had no feel for a slider, really had no feel for anything, was just nowhere near the zone. And this is something that you could have anticipated looking at his numbers in AAA. And for me, I have been talking about Nunez for the last couple of weeks. Ever since AJ Minter went down, I said, all right, you got Nunez. And I looked at the AAA numbers and I talked about them on the show. I did say his whip was over 2, which is walks and hits over innings pitched. And that is because he is giving up more hits than he ever did last year. And he was walking more batters than he ever did last year. But he was pitching on a unique schedule as the Mets were really protecting him. He was pitching in Syracuse instead of in big league competition. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt of wanting to see what it looked like against MLB competition when the adrenaline ramped up, where I thought he would get into this environment and still be able to hit the ground running. Looks like there's some work to be done. I don't think you give up on a guy after one bad outing, but it was a very bad outing. The Mets have really good pitching coaches. They have a lot of people with the big league club that can help you. And so I still believe in Dedniel Nunez and the stuff. The fastball still had life to it. This is a healthy pitcher who has an immense upside. But if he can't locate that breaking ball, there's going to be some issues. He's a 2-pitch pitcher. It's fastball, slider. Sure, you can locate the fastball, but if you can't locate the slider, where's that going to leave you? So Dedniel Nunez is going to have his work cut out for him to sort of figure this thing out. He starts off with a brutal ERA. I don't even know what it is. I didn't even check before starting to record here because I didn't think of it, but it's going to be a comical number as he didn't get any outs. And all 3 runs that Reed Garrett inherited came around to score. He's got the infinity, right? Yep, the infinity ERA right now because he doesn't have an out. So, yeah, I mean, just a brutal start to the season for Nunez. Got to give him some time. Reed Garrett comes into that impossible situation, bases loaded, nobody out. Gets a strikeout. So you're thinking, can Garrett walk this tightrope? No way. He then gives up a base hit up the middle. Josh Naylor gets the knock. First inherited run comes in to score. Then the other 2 do on the longest hit single since Robin Ventura. Eugenio Suarez hits one 412 feet off the top of the wall in center field. But Josh Naylor just had some of the worst base running you'll ever see. He was sort of camped out by first base, thinking that Tyrone Taylor is going to make a spectacular catch instead of standing where you're supposed to on that play, which is on second base, because the chances of Tyrone Taylor making a catch up against the wall and throwing you out at first base are pretty slim. So if he was standing on second base, all of a sudden it could have been a bases clearing double for Suarez, and it might have been a tie game, or at least you would have had runners at second and third. Instead, you have, again, the longest hit single since Robin Ventura, and you have runners at first and second. And Garrett, now that it was only his runners on base, was able to settle down and get out of the jam, picks up a strikeout, then a pop-up that luckily stayed in play for Francisco Alvarez to get out of it. The Mets couldn't score in the 9th, so Edwin Diaz comes on to hold a 1-run lead. He does that with some help of Francisco Lindor, who makes an incredible tag on a stolen base attempt by Alek Thomas. Thomas reached on an error by Pete Alonso. I thought Diaz was a little bit late trying to get over that cover anyway, but also that could have just been because Thomas flies down the line. Really tough. It was going to be a bang play, but Pete just a lazy, bad throw that Diaz was lucky to just reach up and catch, but not able to get to the bag before Thomas. That runner, though, again erased as he tries to steal second base. Francisco Alvarez's throw goes into the runner a little bit, taking Lindor off the bag, and Lindor to catch it and reach for Thomas's back foot and get his heel before his hand gets in there. Remarkable play and potentially a game-saving play because all the momentum that the Diamondbacks were carrying kind of evaporated. Then Edwin Diaz gets a fly out. So now you're 2 outs, nobody on. Corbin Carroll comes up, and Edwin Diaz made Carroll look foolish on 3 straight sliders to pick up the strikeout and convert his 8th save of the year. He is 8 for 8 in save opportunities. So say what you want about Edwin. He's going to be a huge part of this team. We know that. And he's got his ERA down to 3.86. He has 22 strikeouts in 14 innings pitched. And again, so far this year has not blown a save. I think he does have a loss, but not a blown save yet. The Mets are going to need Edwin to continue to step up because the back end of games got a lot less certain with the AJ Minter injury. And now we know that is a season-ending injury. Minter will get surgery on his lat. So he is on a 2-year contract. Hopefully he'll be healthy next year and can make an impact in that second year. But we only got a glimpse of AJ Minter. It was a fantastic glimpse, but he's done. So that is a big arm that you lose in that equation at the end of games. Danny Young, I think I mentioned it, but just in case I haven't, he will be getting Tommy John surgery. So now no lefties to speak of for the Mets, at least from who started the year with this club. So now this bullpen picture has crystallized. And it's going to be Dedniel Nunez getting some run. They're not going to just option him down after one bad outing. They wanted to set things up so that he could have a long leash and they could really work with him. Well, now he's got that opportunity. The Mets have off days every single Thursday for the rest of this month, including this week. So their bullpen, which is a little bit taxed, can get a breather. They have Jose Budo well rested to follow up David Peterson on Tuesday. Peterson versus Zach Gallen going to be a very good pitching matchup. And I'm sure Edwin Diaz would still be good to go in a save opportunity, and Canning should be good to go, and Stanek wasn't used. So the Mets should be fine getting through Tuesday. Maybe Kodai Senga gets them some length on Wednesday. You get to the off day, everybody can take a breather, and you're now on a regular 5-man rotation. Your bullpen is the same 6 guys that have been there all year: Diaz, Garrett, Stanek, Max Canning, Huascar Brazaban, and Jose Budo. Nunez is going to get some run here. Now I think he'll probably pitch in some low leverage opportunities until he looks good in an outing, and then I'm sure they won't be hesitant to throw him back out there and leverage when the opportunity arises. I just think they will give those chances to a Canning or a Brazaban first when Garrett and Stanek aren't available late in games. And you'll see what happens with Nunez. You have to see what you have there before you go to the next option. And who knows what the next option is in the minor leagues. There's not an absolute standout for me outside of a guy that I think still needs to develop a little bit in Ryan Lambert, but I'm just excited about a pitching prospect who could throw well over 100 miles per hour that the Mets now have, flying through their system. I think he's in Double-A now. You got that promotion from high to Double-A, so we'll see how he fares in Binghamton. And if all goes well, you never know, but the Mets right now are going to stick with this group for a little bit. After a lot of turnover lately, I think they want to see what these 8 guys have. The 8th guy being Genesis Cabrera, who is their lefty in the bullpen right now, a guy that pitched to a mid-3s ERA in over 60 innings with the Blue Jays last year, has a lot of big league experience, had many years with the Cardinals, and then I think a year and a half with the Blue Jays. So Cabrera is going to be the lefty. Nunez is eventually hopefully going to work himself into a late inning role, and they have 6 guys who have been throwing the ball well all season that will fill out the rest of that bullpen. So that's where the Mets are at with the pen. There was another injury designation to talk about. Jesse Winker hitting the IL. Brett Baty is back. I want to talk about what that means for the Mets roster in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing better than catching an MLB game live between the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, the smell of ballpark food. If you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever because there's last minute deals, all in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, which takes all the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. If I know I'm going to a game, I wait. I wait till I am at the ballpark, about to walk in, and that is when I pull open my Game Time app. I find the seats that I like. I view my seats before I buy, so I know exactly what to expect when I arrive, and I can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, and they're sent right to my phone. It could not be easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. For $20 off, download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways, and you get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day, so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. I think I'm going to do a giveaway this week. I'm looking back to see what we got. How about this one? Little Wally Backman signed photo. So we're going to do a giveaway. I will do this. Maybe I'll set it for 4 p.m. today. So if you're an insider today, you can get in on a Wally Backman signed photo. It is, I believe, a 2-week free trial to Subtext if you'd like to join again. Find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now let's talk about the situation with Jesse Winker. He caught that fly ball, tried to make a throw home in the first game of the doubleheader on Sunday. And this is why it is unfortunate you stick a guy in the outfield that he DH'd all season. Not something that you could have anticipated, that a play like that would have cost Jesse Winker months, but that is the case. It is a grade 2 oblique strain. They're saying the timetable is 6 to 8 weeks, but obliques are tricky. That was the timetable for Sean Manaea at one point, and it has stretched longer than that, certainly. So we'll see. We'll see how quickly Jesse Winker can get back, but anytime you have an oblique injury, it's tough, pitcher or hitter, but particularly with the amount of torque that hitters need for their swing, it's a tough blow to the Mets because Jesse Winker was giving the Mets some great at-bats. And now you're not going to see him in May, certainly, and you might not see him in June. Earliest possible timetable for return would be mid-June, but I think more likely you're looking at the longer end of 8 weeks, and that would be July. And all of a sudden, the setback, and it could be after the All-Star break. So the Mets will be without Jesse Winker for some time. The corresponding roster move is Brett Baty coming up. Now, I will say, before I get into the Baty side of things, this does give Carlos Mendoza the opportunity to be way more flexible with the DH position. They were rolling with pretty much a straight DH platoon, Winker and Marte, and then occasionally you would see, whether it was a Nimmo getting a DH day. I think he's gotten the most outside of those two guys. But for the most part, it has been Winker, Marte. Now, the heavy side of your platoon is gone. Starling Marte, we saw him get a DH day on Monday against a righty. You could see some more of that. But what I'm more intrigued in is the ability to keep Luisangel Acuna in the lineup even more at second base and to get Jeff McNeil his at-bats in the outfield, whether that's still in center field, although Tyrone Taylor is swinging a red-hot bat right now, so I would keep him in the lineup. But why not have Nimmo get a day off his feet and have McNeil play left, or have Soto get a day off his feet and have McNeil play right? That's going to help you defensively, particularly in right field, where McNeil is a better right fielder than Juan Soto. And honestly, I don't know if he's necessarily better than Nimmo in left. I think quickness, Nimmo probably has a little bit of an edge. I think when it comes to the arm, McNeil has an edge in left over Nimmo, but it's kind of a wash. I just like the idea of Nimmo being able to get off his feet a little bit. So I think that is one way that they can use that DH spot. But then the other one is putting Brett Baty at third base and having Mark Vientos DH instead, because Vientos has not been great defensively this year. He never has been, but particularly bad this season compared to last year. Last year, he was -6 defensive runs saved, -6 outs above average. This year, he's already at -3 defensive runs saved, -4 outs above average. And those stats are accumulating. So over time, a bad defender will rack up more of a bad defensive run saved or a bad outs above average. Last year, he was at a -6 in both of those categories, but he played a little more than 600 innings more than what he's played this year. So Vientos has looked like he's taken a step back, and just on the surface, a defensive infield of Brett Baty at third base, Francisco Lindor at shortstop, with Luisangel Acuna at second, is as good as the Mets could possibly put together right now. That is a potential elite defensive infield. Brett Baty has been very good defensively this year, actually at both third and second. He's been worth 1 out above average at each spot in limited playing time. I think he has a higher WAR than Vientos this year because of the glove. So Brett Baty is going to get another last chance with the Mets, and it comes at a time where he can carry over some confidence, hopefully, from what he did before he got sent down. Over his final 9 games before getting optioned, he was hitting 296, 367 on base, 556 slug, 1 home run, 2 doubles, and a triple. Hit that big home run to the upper deck against Zach Wheeler that helped the Mets sweep the Phillies, and then got the tough luck option down as Jeff McNeil is ready to come up. Now we'll see what Brett Baty does with this opportunity. As far as who's next in line, Ronny Mauricio isn't quite up to AAA yet. He's still taking his time, getting his legs under him in St. Lucie. He's been getting days off between every game. He DH'd the first one. He's been in the field the last couple. He played a game at second, a game at third, a game at short, 5 innings apiece at each position. So he hasn't played a full game yet at any one spot. So he is still pretty far away from even Syracuse. I think you're going to need to see him play some full 9-inning games in that protective environment in Port St. Lucie. Maybe you let the weather warm up a little bit too in Syracuse when you get into the summer months before you send Mauricio out there. I think this year it's about getting Ronny Mauricio right with his health first and foremost. Once he checks those boxes, if the Mets need somebody to provide a spark in the second half, yeah, that could be Ronny Mauricio. But is Ronny Mauricio going to be ready to contribute at the big league level before Jesse Winker is good off of an oblique injury? I really don't know. That's a coin flip for me. I feel like the timelines are pretty similar. I think it could be 2 months before Mauricio is ready to come up, because I think it might still be 2 more weeks until we see him up in Syracuse. And then you need him to get 4 to 6 weeks there of just playing every day, getting at bats against top end competition before you even think about throwing him into the fire of big league competition. So that's not an option behind Baty. I talked about Jared Young on yesterday's show. He's swinging the bat well, but it's 10 games, and you don't have much invested in Jared Young. You signed him as a guy that could help you this year, but you don't have years of development on a first-round pick like Baty, is with this organization. A guy that has endeared himself to a lot of those coaches. A lot of people in this organization believe in Brett Baty. So you have an opportunity now for this guy to play a little bit, and I think it makes sense that they went for Baty, considering that toe injury obviously wasn't significant, and he's going to get his opportunities. He's not going to be the everyday third baseman or part of a platoon at third base, but I do think that the Mets could work their way there. I still think the best version of this lineup right now probably has Mark Vientos at DH and Brett Baty at third, and that's against right-handed pitchers, where you'd have Acuna at second, you have Baty at third, and you figure out where to fit in Jeff McNeil. For all I care, Jeff McNeil doesn't play. I mean, if Tyrone Taylor's swinging it the way he does right now, fine. Tyrone Taylor could be your everyday center fielder the way he's swinging the bat. Now, Taylor's going to cool off, and then you can have games where Jeff McNeil starts in center, and you have Baty at third, you have Vientos at DH, and then as the game goes on, you move Taylor back into the game. You decide, depending on where you're at in the lineup, if Jeff McNeil's going to stay in there or if Jeff McNeil's going to and move to a different position, or if McNeil's going to come out of the game early. But the Mets have so many different options they can play with. I just am really liking the idea of that Baty, Lindor, Acuna infield. When Clay Holmes is on the mound, put those guys out there, because balls are going to be hitting the ground, and you can really see a great defensive infield behind the Mets starting pitchers. That's going to be exciting. And if Brett Baty can hit, you never know where you go. So right now, what I would love to see is a lot of games where there's a right-hander on the mound. You got Baty at third, Vientos at DH. When a lefty's on the mound, then you play Vientos at third base and you DH Marte. Obviously, there's going to be some games where Vientos still starts against a righty. You don't want to get him, so used to DHing that he can't play third, because if Baty doesn't hit, you're going to be back at some point this season to Vientos probably being your everyday guy at the position. But for now, see what you have in Brett Baty. Take this opportunity, because you can learn a lot. And also during this time, you're going to learn a lot about McNeil, and you're going to learn a lot about Marte, because when Winker comes back, if Jeff McNeil isn't hitting, he could be relegated to a really defined bench role of just sort of being a guy that is a pinch hitter and helping off the bench and starts a game, a series, but he might not be getting consistent run. If Starling Marte doesn't hit at all and Brett Baty is hitting, you might see the Mets say, all right, well, you know what? We're going to have to figure out how to keep Baty on the roster, and maybe Marte is a roster casualty at some point. For now, this gives you the opportunity to learn more about the guys that you have, and the good thing is the Mets still have nothing but good options. You also have Drew Gilbert, who is playing well in Syracuse. And so if the Mets ever need someone to come up and mix it up with Tyrone Taylor in center field in a platoon, that could be Drew Gilbert, but I don't think that you go there right now. I don't think you go to Drew Gilbert until June at the earliest. You give him all of May, which would be his first complete month in AAA this year because he didn't start with the team. He's just been up for a couple weeks now after starting the season, a little bit of an extended spring training in St. Lucie, and see if Gilbert sustains this offensive success playing every single day. The last thing you want is bringing him up and playing him twice a week. That's not good for Drew Gilbert's development. But the Mets have a lot of good options here, and Brett Baty right now is next man up. We'll see what he does with this opportunity. This might be his last extended run of playing time with the New York Mets. Now, I said that after spring training, he didn't quite get the job done, and now he's back 12 days later. That's just how baseball works. You need every single man on your 40-man roster to contribute, and this is Brett Baty's time. I do want to clear something up because there was a lot of discourse about this today on social media. I think I got a couple questions from Locked On Mets insiders about it as well. Options. Now, I know I've talked about this on the show. I want the term option years to become part of our common vernacular as baseball fans instead of options, because once I made that switch in my mind a couple years ago where I really read into this after getting tripped up by what an option is for all this time, everything made sense. So it's very easy to find too. That's the frustrating part, once you actually realize, where I was like, oh my God, it was so simple. It was right there. You can look up minor league options and read it directly from Major League Baseball, but essentially what an option is it's an option year, which means when a player is designated, a player who's on a 40-man roster is designated to AAA for the first time, is sent down. That is an option. An option is used. That turns that season into an option year. So that means that, Brett Baty, when he was optioned down 12 days ago, it turned into an option year. If Brett Baty had stayed on the Mets roster the entire season, if he never was dropped from the big league club, he would have retained an option going into next year. Like David Peterson last year, he was hurt. He came off the 60-day IL and he, pitched the full season without ever getting sent down. He did not use an option. Tyler McGill did get sent down at one point. He used an option. And then what happens is a player can be called up and down up to 5 times in that option year. If you try to option a player down for the 6th time, then they're designated for assignment. So that only comes up with a reliever potentially. With a guy like Brett Baty, up and down 5 times, it's hard to get there in a full season. So this is why Brett Baty is not a change of scenery candidate this year, because you don't have to worry about, oh man, Winker is ready to come back, so we have to option down Brett Baty, and that uses up his final option, and now we got to put him on waivers, so now he is stuck on the roster. And I think there's a lot of people that made that mistake today where they saw one option left on Brett Baty, and they thought, oh, they're using his option. That's not how it works. They use his option already. He has the flexibility all year to be up and down between AAA and the big leagues. Next year, when it comes time for the Mets to decide their non-tenders, I don't think they would non-tender Baty even if he had an awful season. But once you get to that point where you really are out of options and you have yet to prove yourself as a big leaguer, that is where you become a change of scenery guy, where the Mets are calling up these second division teams that might have an opportunity, and you sort of do Baty the favor and you let him start with a different team from spring training on and maybe carve out, a career somewhere else. But right now, for this season, Brett Baty, until he starts hitting for an extended period of time, he is not going to carry much trade value. So the Mets are best served to hang on to him so that if something pops up, like this injury to Winker, if something ever happened to Vientos or to your second base situation, you have that additional coverage on your 40 with Brett Baty. So I hope that explains that. We will see how the Mets deploy Baty. Still don't know if that toe is lingering. Obviously, it wasn't enough that they decided not to call him up, but he wasn't in the lineup for the first game. We'll see if he's out there against Zach Gallen on Tuesday night. I will be breaking down Tuesday night's game. I'll be looking ahead to Kodai Senga's start and much more on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider and get in on the Wally Backman signed photo, you can do that by going to subtext.com/LockedOnMets or finding the link in the episode description. Again, I'm going to send that text out at 4 o'clock with how you can enter for the giveaway. So for all you insiders, make sure you stay tuned for that later this afternoon. Make sure that you thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. This is the show where we will take you across Major League Baseball with insight from all 30 Locked On MLB hosts with each specific team. And you can find the show on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or the Locked On MLB podcast feed.